I was gonna have to clap. Look at all of you. Thank you so much for coming today. May I present our host, Fabrizio Sasson.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Fabrizio Sasso. I'm the Executive Director of the Sacramento Central Labor Council. Thank you all for joining us today. Wilma said, just read the script because I have a tendency to ramble off. Really excited about this project and what we're all getting ourselves into. But I want to thank you all for joining us. This is a workshop that's hosted by the Labor Council and the Ring of Democracy. This Labor Council is proud to serve as a vital voice for working families within our region. We represent over 100 unions in the area, who represent about 180,000 union members across the entire 6-county region. That's a part of our jurisdiction. And our mission is to uplift the voices of working people, to advance fair wages, better working conditions, and benefits. And at the core of our work is the belief that when labor thrives, so does the community. And so today it's an absolute honor to be here with all of you. We have labor leaders, community advocates, business leaders, government agencies, nonprofit agencies. And it's rare that we find ourselves all in the same space working towards one goal, which I think is kind of special. And it's a special component of this project. We have this unique and powerful opportunity to create a sustainable economy that fosters equity and provides good paying jobs with benefits for people who truly need them, right? We could transform those lives by doing so. So the Catalyst Fund is a game-changing resource designed to fund pre-development projects that drive economic growth and create opportunities in this region. And this initiative focuses on workforce and economic development, ensuring that the resources we invest reach out to those who need them the most. What makes it so extraordinary is that it represents a bold departure from the trickle-down economic model that we've seen that really we know doesn't work, right? And it empowers communities to shape the future from the ground up, really. And this is a grassroots effort. Ground up grassroots effort, which I think is also very unique about this. This is an opportunity for us to collaborate, to partner, and to envision how we can best use the Catalyst Fund to support transformative projects that leave a lasting impact. And together, labor and community and business and government, we can all find these forge these partnerships that not only address the immediate needs, but also build the foundation for sustained economic and social progress within the region. And so, again, thank you for being here. We look forward to working with you. We're ready to roll up our sleeves, so let's get to work. Thank you. And I think I'm going to hand it back over to Scarlett.
So I'm going to introduce Wilma.
Hi, Wilma Volsi, with the Leadership Council, the Ring of Democracy, and also the Sacramento Central Labor Council. Thank you all for being here. That is all I have to say. Gotta run. Thank you.
And next up is, actually it's me. Hi. I'm Scarlett Bustos. I am one of the team members of the Ring of Democracy. We're serving as the Sacramento ambassador for We Prosper Together. Here, bringing people together, answering questions, on your hookup with whoever you need to collaborate with. We'll find somebody to collaborate with. And thank you so much for coming. Please silence your cell phones. Bathrooms are to the left. Bathroom keys on the table outside right here. And may I introduce Zach Friels, who is the labor ambassador. Let's give it up.
Hey everybody, so I'm Zach. I'm a consultant with the Sacramento Central Labor Council. I am the only ambassador assigned to the entire 8-county region. So some of you are from the outside the Sacramento area. I am a resource for you if you have any specific interests or partnerships that you want to build with labor organizations. If you have interest in how you could have an inclusive strategy about workers or workforce development, I'm a resource for you. So if you have not contacted me before but need my contact information afterwards, feel free to come up to me. I'd love to sit down with you and chat about any particular projects you may have, or any resources you need to have inclusive workforce development. I quickly want to go through an icebreaker, see who's in the room, and get a sense as to what folks know and what they don't. So if we can start, maybe we'll just start from the front and we'll work our way through the rows. But I mostly want to hear your name, the organization you're with, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how familiar are you with the We Prosper Together Catalyst Fund? Start with
Okay, my name is Jessica Williams. I am the job snatcher. I am about 4 or 5 familiar
Okay.
with the grant fund. I hope I leave at a 10.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I do workforce development. I do initiatives. I have partnerships with Chevron and Contra Costa County Office of Education.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolina. I'm with the YOLO Community Foundation. We're the YOLO Community Ambassador. I'm here to sit in and support. We are also, if you are a YOLO partner, because in phase 1, YOLO and Sac County were together. We're having our workshop tomorrow. So if you want to come and make some connections tomorrow in YOLO County, it's from 5 to 7 at the YOLO County Office of Education. We can talk more offline if you're interested in attending.
Hi, everybody. My name is Haley Myers Dillon. I work at Sacramento State in Student Affairs. I'm here with Andrew, who we'll get to representing. We have about 12 cultural academic resource centers, and we're always looking to help our students get jobs and get career ready. Needing those now more than ever. And I'm at a 0 or a 1.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Lovedeep. I'm with California Health Collective. I'm also a community ambassador, and I'm working with Yuba and Sutter County. So if you guys are interested in either of those communities, go ahead and let me know. We'll also be having an event sometime next week. So if you're interested, go ahead and ask.
Hi, everyone. I'm Renata Janik. I'm the founder and CEO of Foodum. And so we have a project that is very ready. Definitely in March will be live and running. And we are looking to get some help from the Catalyst Fund. We're for-profit. Our project create new jobs for chefs, good high-paying jobs for chefs. Our top chef makes $10,000 to $12,000 a month. It was 0 before that, so we can create really, really nice jobs for chefs. And also create local jobs. We're a startup. So our goal is to grow to hundreds and then thousands of employees in the area and create good jobs for students and computer science. We're a high-tech company. And we're for profit, so I'm looking for a partner to apply. It's a very short amount of time. We're ramping up a very big project with Anthem and Sutter, where we're going to take care of Medi-Cal patients, provide them cooking lessons, and chef will cook for them food in their home, and Anthem will pay for that for qualifying patients. So we can't apply by ourselves, and it's super urgent. Yeah, we actually, they asked us to start taking patients this month, and it's like pretty stressful. And just sitting here, I'm stressed. I was like, oh my gosh, it's coming, and I need to prepare. So, you got any help?
Good evening, Julie Davis Jaffe, Workforce Development Manager with Sacramento Employment and Training Agency. And I know William Walker does a lot with We Prosper Together, so I'm more on that, maybe 1 scale, but happy to learn more about it.
Everyone, my name is Tessa Rahibe. I am one of the 2 board members here representing the Sacramento Community Land Trust. We exist to provide affordable housing, primarily for or as a priority to our historically underserved communities. And we are in the process of acquiring more property. We got our first one last year, and we have our sights set on 2 to 3 others right now. So we're very interested in acquiring more funding. Our executive director is actually at a different event tonight, otherwise she would be here as listed. Yeah, I am about a 0 or a 1, so a lot to learn. I'll fix it tomorrow.
Stands like everyone. Hi, my name is Michaela Taylor. I'm another board member of the Sacramento Community Land Trust. And like Cesar said, we have some big projects coming down. This actually required a really big building that's gonna have a lot of folks and employ a lot of people. So just being here in this space, just learn more because I am a 0. So deployed learning more is gonna be fantastic. So yeah, excited to go.
Hi, everybody. Andrew Yang. I am director of one of our cultural academic resource center. Echoing what Dr. Dillon said, we work with students to help them graduate, and then after graduation, make sure there's a job employment ready to go. Here to learn more about the grant. I'm at a 0.5 because I read a little bit about it, but looking forward to learning more, and yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Yu, and I do grants and fundraising for Asian Resources Incorporated. It's a nonprofit in South Sacramento. We work very closely with SETA. We've been providing workforce development for adults and youth and dislocated and sorry, I'm recovering from cold and prison and refugees for over 30 years here in Sacramento. We're very excited for the opportunity to be part of the Catalyst and to find a great partners to work with. And I met about like 2.5. Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Davon Thomas, and I do external affairs work for AG Rob Bonta. I also serve as a commissioner on the Sacramento Children's Fund Planning Oversight Commission. So a lot of that's focused mainly on youth work, but a part of the Children's Fund is workforce development for young folks. So that I come here and learn more about this. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. Lauren Hernandez from El Dorado County, representing the El Dorado Community Foundation Economic Germination Fund, which just co-founded with a partner this month, inspired by this work. Very little engagement in our community, very significant income disparities. So we have El Dorado Hills and we have very rural communities that are very disconnected to resources and any economic opportunities. So we're really happy to show up in this space and are pretty familiar, have diligently read the RFP and been involved in processes since at the policy level, previously worked in the legislature when this programming things were being developed. So.
I'm from over the hills and I tried to move freedom to other county, but currently it's in Sacramento County.
Well, I would love
The resources were there.
Yeah, so we're hoping to provide that capacity to engage.
Hey everyone, Priyanka Mohanty, I'm the executive director for the United Auto Workers Center for Manufacturing Green Economy, or CMGE. We are the workforce development arm of the UAW, the Auto Workers Union. We focus on building what we like to call high road, worker-centered, community-centered training programs and recruitment programs for union jobs in the green manufacturing space. So that's batteries, that's solar, that's wind, that's essentially any technology that we need to manufacture in order to tackle our climate crisis. We're working with a variety of partners here in Sacramento, including the California Mobility Center. You'll hear from them next to develop training programs for some of the battery manufacturers that are setting up in the Sacramento area. My familiarity level with Jobs First is about, I would say, 6 to an 8, depending on the day. But super excited to learn more about the details, and thanks to the Sacramento Council for putting this on.
Hey everyone, Orville Thomas, CEO of the California Mobility Center. We're a Sacramento-based nonprofit that focuses on clean energy, power, and innovation, and trying to make sure that we can grow those innovative technologies in our region and train our communities how to manufacture and maintain it. Great to see a lot of familiar faces, obviously CMGE. We have SETA partnerships, ARI partnerships, Sac State's on my board, along with UC Davis, Yolo County, shout out. So really excited for what this has an opportunity to do with Catalyst and grow our kind of training programs. We do EV maintenance. We're working with CMGE on battery manufacturing. We do an introduction to jobs and green careers, zero emission forklift training classes and certifications. And so we want to make sure that we could start amplifying that into all parts of the We Prosper Together region. As far as familiarity, I'm on the leadership council, so I think they'll banish me if I say less than 8, but I'd say 8.1 just to be fair, because there's always subject. Thank you.
My name's Bill Burnell. I'm the CFO of Legal Calendaring Solutions. The one thing that attorneys don't ever want is a malpractice suit brought upon them, and most of them are generated by inefficient calendaring programs. like Clio and Law Toolbox. So we've developed an entirely different system that goes into Yolo County or goes into Santa Clara and takes a look at their courts, rules, and deadlines required of the attorneys. And we're looking to train people that are need a leg up because it's a great income, and to partner with anybody that needs a position where they have dignity and self-respect for themselves in their working environment is critical. You perform much better when you know that you're working on something that makes a difference. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Craner, project manager with Community Strong Strategies. I have my team here. We work closely with Valley Vision through We Prosper Together. So I would say by association, I'm about a 9 or a 10, depending on the day though, because things change all the time. We also work closely with our community ambassadors. So Lovedee, Scarlett, Carolina, Zach. We support in all aspects of the work that they're doing here today and information sharing. So happy to meet you all.
Hey everybody, Isa Vincenia. I'm a project director, also with the Community Strong Strategies team. Echo Christina, I would have to say probably a 9, depending on the day, 9 or 10. And yeah, really happy to be here and meet all of you, and just eager to offer support in whatever way we can.
Richard Dan, I'm the third part of Community Strong Strategies. It's here today. Good to see a lot of you that I know. I've seen some of you for a while, so it's good to see you all in person. See in little boxes.
Yeah,
I would say that only reason I would be at a 9 is if the state has changed their regulations in any way, which actually does occur more often than we want it to. So right now I'm probably at a 9.5, just for uncertainty reasons.
What's up, everybody? I'm Maximilian Rosa. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Sierra Service Project. We've been running youth programs since 1975. I started our first workforce development program, the Sacramento Sustainability Academy, trying to teach people how to grow food, build, and design and make things. So I'd say maybe like a 6 to an 8 at this point of the night, closer to 6 on the We Prosper Together. Still working through the full vision.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Brown from the Lake, so I didn't get the scoring system that we're talking about.
How familiar are you with the grant?
Okay, not a 6 or 8, probably, I'm familiar with the intent and the spirit of the grant. Been going through it to understand the feasibility studies we want to do, so okay, I'll give myself a 6. So from people working together, we've also heard of maybe as PWT, people working together. We've been around for a good, since about 2014 informally, and then 2017 started our official work. Started working with SETA, workforce development, what we focus on. Construction has been the focal point, putting folks into the trades, partnering very strongly with the Sacramento Sierra building trades on that over time. We've taken hundreds of folks from underserved communities. We have a strong outreach arm. We bring them into our programs. We have a very high 80+% graduation rate. We have a very healthy placement rate as well. And so we continue to do that on the workforce development side. We're starting to branch now off into youth as well. So we've dug into the high schools and are partnering with some of the high schools to give them awareness. We've had the HRCC grant. With HRCC, we put about, I think we're at about 160 folks through the program now, and that's been focused on construction. What we're doing is moving already into IT, AI, and we're looking into the green technologies, building automation, and we're setting partnerships up with some very key employers that are partnering with us to bring those on board as well. Those are some of the feasibilities we're looking at. The building that we're in, to take more of that building over, use that building as a as a hub to really train underserved communities.
I think we have most of our guests, but I do want to, before we begin, give a shout out to the Labor Council and the Ring of Democracy team. If we go ahead and introduce ourselves over here and go maybe from this side down.
Hi folks, my name is Ellen Sanson. I'm the organizer here at the Sacramento Central Labor Council.
Hello everyone, I'm Mia Stevens. I am the communication specialist for the Ring of Democracy. Very happy to see all of you tonight.
Hi there, my name is Jalen Wise and I'm a volunteer with the Ring of Democracy.
Hi everyone, my name is Veronica Bolis and I am an outreach specialist with the
Hi everyone, my name is Jose Mesquita Morales. I'm lead community organizer for the Ring of Democracy. So I'm typically the guy that's running after all of you guys, trying to get you guys. So yeah.
And that was your name at the end of the email.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, now that we all know each other, I just want a couple of quick housekeeping things. If you do need to use the restroom, there are 2 bathrooms located right out here in the hallway. Make sure to use the deadbolt. You do not need a key, but make sure to use that deadbolt. Keep it locked. If you do need food or refreshment, we have it here. We believe in breaking ourselves here, so we are going to move through quite a bit of stuff, but we will have some breakout sessions. But feel free if you need refreshments or anything else, help yourself. Go over a quick agenda for us. One of the reasons why I asked to score yourself on how well do you understand the RFP is we are going to recap some of the highlights. And I really want to thank Valley Vision and the CSS team for getting out the materials necessary for folks to understand the RFP. I am pretty familiar with this myself. I have been on the project since October of 2023, so I can answer some of the questions that you might have. But also this has changed over time. And so some of this is really part of us creating meaning in real time. And so if you have questions, like feel free to ask them because we want to make sure that you fully understand the RFP process so that your applications are as best as they can be, okay? And after that, we're going to engage in some breakouts. Part of the reason why we're here is not just to learn more about the RFP. I want folks to walk away with hopefully some partnerships or relationships in the region that you could potentially leverage to have a better proposal. And if you don't have that part here, then let's work on that between now and February 2nd when the first deadline passes, okay? We're here to support you in that endeavor. And lastly, in that spirit, the very end of the meeting, we'll have some free time for folks to network and get a chance to collect contact information and be able to set up those next steps for your respective organization, all right? All right. So I'm going to jump into some slides that were provided by Valley Vision. I'm going to start with a key distinction about the Catalyst Fund. So there are really 2 types of projects we want to think about, and it's a really important distinction. The first is exploratory projects. And does anybody want to take a stab at defining for us what an exploratory project is?
Less money.
Money, less money, yeah.
So actually, I was actually debating if it's an exploratory project. So we have this idea of creating, so there are a lot of chefs available out there in the US and in California. They don't have a lot of experience or knowledge on diets and nutrition, healthy nutrition. Now, because we partner to support underserved, chronically sick people, we wanted to empower them and create a program for them where they can learn that. Now, we identified a few potential programs, but it's still exploratory stage where we need to learn more. So it's even hard for me to tell, like, how much to apply. Like, if we want, so we have 2. We have the exploratory on the education part, but all the rest is ready to go.
Yeah.
So is this accurate?
I mean, ultimately, the leadership council will decide whether or not it qualifies as an if it's in the exploratory phase or last mile. Generally speaking, if you're creating a new program, a pilot, if you will, that's probably going to count. And that'll be an important distinction to talk about what can be covered. A good way to think about this is exploratory is one that it's not shovel ready. You're not breaking ground on anything. You don't have the final steps that you're lurching towards to be able to start your project. Exploratory really means you have an idea that you need to study further to be able to bring that to fruition, right? I call these the napkin ideas, the things that we wrote down when we had a great idea while we were out for dinner or at the coffee shop and we're like, hey, I need to write that down or send an email to myself reminding me about this. That is going to really be the exploratory phase of the project. That's where if you don't have your partner set yet, right? You're gonna be seeking out those partners. And so it's a really good test as to whether or not it would count as exploratory or last mile. Now, last mile is important because there will be another round of funding coming. And so like the idea here is let's get our ideas explored and get ready to launch them because we are going to come back around to an implementation phase. And that'll be an important piece that if you have projects that's not exploratory, that will come later in the grant process.
Question.
Go ahead.
Can you have both?
At least for the Catalyst Fund will go to exploratory projects.
Even though last mile may not be ready, you still have a few things to check out for feasibility.
I mean, that's a great question. And Richard, you want to chime in?
So, so a couple things. One is I'm going to take a little off the hook here at the Leadership Council. These titles are coming from the state themselves. So these funds are being passed through a collective called We Prosper Together, right? Which is the nice logo on the bottom corner there. One of the funding sources they have is the California Jobs First funds, which is these funds right here that we're talking about. So they've the state has dictated a little bit some of the like categories that can be within them. So exploratory, yes, you're right on, Zach. These are like you've got a concept, but you haven't done anything to really see if it's even feasible. You know, you need to like do your you got to really do your market study. You got to know if it's even something you can go forward with, right? So the beginning phases. The last mile is still eligible. Those are projects that are not ready to be, they're not shovel ready yet. They need that last piece to become shovel ready. In other words, you're not ready to push the button go, but maybe you have like that last bit of planning, that last feasibility study that you need, the last whatever it is. That's your last mile projects. Both those are two different types of places.
Yeah.
And so your question about can you be both? It's where your project is in its scope of work at this stage. Where are you on your timeline? That's where you're going to fit in on that.
Yeah, we've got elements that are very much exploratory. You know, are we going to get into the you know, how are we going to jump into the green technologies?
Sure.
And all of that, we're not there. It's concepts we have for future. And then we have things we build upon where we've just started the concept of IT and high tech and networking. And we're kind of in the proto pilot stage. So I think it's just separate elements.
Different projects potentially,
Yeah,
right? So if they're two different projects, two different applications potentially.
Got it.
If it's a pilot, it's considered exploratory.
And a pilot is only within the workforce area. The rest of them are like you have to be actually in the exploratory and or last mile piece otherwise. May I add one more piece?
Yeah.
Implementation is not a part of these dollars. So I know you mentioned that, Zach. I just want to highlight that. So because that's your question right there. It's like it's not about implementation. Pilot is based on the workforce component of it. So just note those pieces to it.
Brenda?
Can I just ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Maybe
Sorry.
either one of you.
I appreciate that.
Either one of you.
Yeah.
Our understanding is that implementation funding is coming from the state and catalyst funding is coming out of the region.
That's correct.
Do you disqualify yourself if you apply for catalyst funding to apply for implementation funding? Is there sort of either or there? Can you apply for all of the above?
So yeah, so you can use these dollars as a step towards implementation dollars.
Gotcha.
In fact, there's still not, the state has still not released the implementation, but they have made notification that will be an expectation that you will be in some way connected to the region initiative.
Sure.
It doesn't mean you've received funding necessarily.
Yeah.
But that you've received the like the written, yes, we like this project. It fits our area.
Gotcha.
So but you can get funding in both. Theoretically.
I've got a question before you sit down.
Really quickly, so just building on Bianca's question. At the Catalyst Fund, there's about $9 million.
Yeah, that's right.
And the implementation fund for most of those shovel-ready projects and those ones that are ready to go is about $120 million. So for everyone looking at where they are, it's not like you are going to compete, you lose yourself out. It's just where are you in this process and time?
$9 million for this
Yeah,
region.
this region.
120 for the state.
There's what, 14?
How much of this?
13 or 14.
COVID-19. But.
How much of the dollars?
Yeah.
Actually, originally they did use what's also known as ARPA dollars. They had earmarked that and then partway through the process of launching. This is I'm talking like now 2.5 years ago, they switched it to general funds.
Right.
So these are all general funds from California. So they're not contingent to the regulations of
SBA?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I also imagine that when the time is appropriate, Valley Vision will probably host a discussion about the implementation funds. And so
when we get there.
Yeah, when
it's
we get
not
there,
even released yet.
it's
So.
something that when we talked about the moving target, like that is part of the challenge with the grant and our understanding is it could potentially change. And, you know, there's a lot of fiscal uncertainty out there. So I think we're going to parking lot maybe the conversations about that future funding and focus on maybe some examples of what the current funding could go towards. So Valley Vision did actually provide some tips about the types of projects that folks could think about applying for funding. And so I want to cover a few of these because I think this may help generate some of the brainstorming you'll need for your respective organization. So the first bucket here is planning and feasibility. And this is, I think, a really important part for exploratory projects. You have the opportunity to even apply to see, is this an idea that is going to work, right? And what steps are you going to need for that, right? And a planning, you know, a feasibility study can be pretty inclusive if you, especially if you're thinking about, do I need to acquire a new facility? Do I like, what does that take, right? What kind of capital am I going to have to generate? A market analysis is going to determine like, is this product that I'm potentially working with going to be feasible on the market, right? Like, am I going to actually be able to sell this before I go out and acquire additional funding? That's an important piece, especially if you are incubating like a company that plans to bring a specific product to market, especially in the new technologies that are out there. And I will get into the covered clusters. I was going to do this before. We talked about specific projects, but since there's a lot of questions about what could the funding go to, we'll handle that and then we'll get into the specific industries that are applicable. This also includes in the planning feasibility, you know, site plans, project designs, necessary permitting. I don't necessarily want to get into CEQA, but like we know that the development process can be challenging for folks. And so if you're just starting out with a brand new project, you're probably going to be going through some of these steps. And so you can apply for that funding with this grant. Additionally, this can go towards financial and legal frameworks. And this is specifically if you're setting up a brand new project, if you're exploring a public-private partnership and trying to develop an MOU for a specific project and have to retain lawyers or potential other resources, that might be one particular use of the funds. You can also explore whether or not a regional tax financing district would be applicable. This is particular if you're doing any business related to large scale development that you would be seeking a portion of those funds. This also entitles you to be able to explore whether or not community benefits agreements can be created within the project. And before I move on from that, do folks understand where I'm coming from with the community benefits agreement? Do we need discussion on that? Because I think it's going to be important when we get to the inclusive strategies piece.
Yeah, give us a little highlight.
Yeah, so whenever there's a large scale catalytic development, a community benefits agreement is usually where whoever the developer is making specific commitments to the community in which they're engaging in the project. And there can be a whole host of them, right? They can range from workforce development programming, housing, investments in the community, right? It's really articulating what is your promise to the region in which you're operating. This is particularly important if you're operating in a divested community, one in which typically doesn't have access to the development process, that you want to make specific commitments with like usually typically with an organization in that space or like through a network of partnerships that you may develop along the way.
So these are like project labor management groups.
Those are often found within a community benefits agreement. Aggie Square has a community benefits agreement that is often seen as a model for which you can engage large-scale catalytic development. There is some dispute as to what size of a project would trigger a threshold for a CBA, but that's definitely, if you're considering a large-scale project, that you would want to consider. And I think like things like hotels, stadiums, like very large projects typically have them. But even if you're, taking up a whole new city block, could potentially like have questions about what a community benefits agreement would look like. That also generally comes up when you're talking about a regional tax financing district as well, as those often go in hand with those large scale catalytic developments. This funding can also include capacity building. And I think your organizations probably love this, but one of the things that we find when talking to CBOs or nonprofits, C5s, and even for-profit entities is often there's just a lacking in capacity to be able to even pursue the grants, the patchwork of grants you might need for your project, or the capital you may need to go out there and acquire to be able to acquire a new facility and redevelop it and all of those things. So you can actually use this grant for that capacity building. You could also use that capacity building, and Valley Vision's tip is if you need to provide professional development for key members of your team. Remember that your team may not have all the skills you need to execute the project, and that might be a consideration you want to make when developing your project proposals, whether you need to hire someone specifically or somebody you could upskill to be able to help you execute your project. Lastly, and Richard talked a little bit about this specifically, but pilot projects. And this is really important if you're developing a new project, that this is a good opportunity to apply for the funding. And really, this is so that you have a window to determine, can this be scaled up, right? And to what scale are you going to be able to build it up for? And I think that's where, we talked about a little bit about the steps to the grant process, that ideally that next pot of money that could come out could also be then used to take this to where you really want it to go. But pilot projects are key. So if you have an existing project you're seeking just to expand, that may not be necessarily the most appropriate. If you're starting a brand new project, that is where you would be creating a pilot, and that's where you want to maybe apply for the Catalyst funding. I'm going to quickly backtrack and go to the specific industry clusters we want to talk about. So we talked about how you could use the money, but we do need to talk about which industries are going to be potentially able to apply for the funding. So through the Brookings Institute research and a variety of resources that have been provided and available on Valley Vision's website, they were able to identify some very specific clusters they'd like folks to focus on. Among these are business services, precision manufacturing, working lands, and biotechnology. I can give a couple of brief examples of some of these, but this is not meant to be exhaustive under these priority tradable sectors. But business services are generally things that we help. I often think of business incubation or being able to help launch new industries or new small businesses. Or there could be professional services under business services that could be exportable, tradable outside of this region that you could really take and expand and create a new profitable industry. Precision manufacturing, there's a lot going on in precision manufacturing these days. So I don't even know where we would begin to start here, but precision manufacturing is often, new how to start this, batteries, semiconductors, the technologies we need for the next generation economy. And that is not necessarily exhaustive, right? Sierra College has an advanced manufacturing program that is conducting specific precision manufacturing training and development. But that is where the attempt is to bring manufacturing back to the region, things that could then be exported outside the region, and particularly precision manufacturing is really important for any new green technology that may be coming on market so that we'd be able to export elsewhere outside of the region. Working lands is another really important area for the Capital Corridor. Easiest explanation why is because the amount of agricultural productive land and the public lands that exist around here, and there are a whole host of potential industries found within them. But working lands is largely meant to highlight that we are still an agricultural economy, and that those working lands present a opportunity for us to be able to generate new small businesses or new industries on those lands, to be able to further explore them. Biotechnology also is a very nebulous industry. Biotechnology is largely things that are, and if the CSS team wants to chime in here on biotech, but like things that can be manufactured and traded related to the production. I mean, in this region, we have everything for like UC Davis, Sac State have research and development laboratories that create new products that can be brought to market and then sold across the United States and if not the world. And that is the real goal behind the priority tradable sectors. Some are,
I can be your Vanna too. I happen to have the RFP open in front of me. And
You wanna
don't
try to
worry,
show
we
for-
are gonna send you the slides, we are going to send you the RFP, we are gonna send you the resources so that you can go over all of these yourselves. And there is actually a proposers conference that was hosted by Valley Vision. And so we're also gonna send you that recording. You're gonna have all the resources you need, but I'm following along with the RFP while he's talking. So if you have any, like, if you want me to Vanna and just tell you.
I mean, if you want, especially for biotech, because I think that's one of the ones
Biotechnology,
that-
examples of middle skill occupations consist of technicians, including lab, drafting, engineering, and mapping technicians, information and records organization specialists, mathematical science occupations, management and supervisory positions, installation, maintenance, repair workers, and administrator roles. Specifically with core drivers of research and innovation in the county, the sector offers promise for the expansion of future high quality job opportunities.
We like that.
It's exhaustive, right? Like, I want to talk about opportunity sectors. So, I think the intent here with priority tradable sectors is there is a new economy developing, and we want to make sure that Sacramento has those industries created here. But there are also a number of sectors that have opportunities for particular workforce development and or opportunities for folks now. And in those opportunity sectors, we find construction, healthcare, tourism, and creative economy. To unpack some of these, right? In construction often has some of the clearest, most direct paths for on-the-job apprenticeship paid training into basically high-road jobs that will pay north of a living wage with benefits. The same is true for healthcare. And really recovering from the pandemic, our large healthcare employers still have not been able to get to the staffing levels they were before the pandemic. Those jobs will continue to earn living wages and benefits and be able to contribute to the local economy in dramatically beneficial ways. Healthcare also, as you've noted, probably have noticed around here, drives some of the largest catalytic development in the region, whether that's Aggie Square or the Cal North State Hospital in Natomas, or if you have hospitals in your specific region from outside the Sacramento area, you are probably seeing a lot of construction happening at your healthcare facilities. Tourism and the creative economy. These are often grouped together, but tourism and creative economy are also important places we want to highlight, in part because they bring a potential multiplier factor to the region, in particular for economic growth. Whenever, like, a good way to explain this would be like, anytime you have a music festival come into the region, the amount of money that is brought in, that has a multiplier effect, not just for the promoter, right, and the amount of money they make off the event, but all the small businesses surrounding the venue, all the concessions and the other stuff, the hotel rooms and the stuff that comes in. Sacramento has really reinvented itself as a destination city and has really become a place where folks want to travel. In fact, I actually think today Travel and Leisure Magazine ranked it in its top 50 best places to travel to in 2025. And that is a sign that tourism continues to be a strong part of the local economy and that there are gainful opportunities in those specific sectors. And go ahead.
Zach, I was going to ask if you could define, just for folks, the tradable versus local economy piece.
Yeah, so, I mean, the way I would generally explain it is like the tradable versus local economy is like these jobs are service facing. I would say opportunity sectors are generally service facing within the region, and that means like they're providing direct services to the community, and that those folks are generally earning, living, and working here in the Sacramento area. Tradable sectors are largely where folks are going to be producing something that is then sold and exported outside the region. And that could be as close as the Bay Area, it could be global. right? Sacramento does have access to a port and is connected to ports throughout the Bay Area, and that opens it up to potentially trading across the world, which is an important piece to this. And when we talk about creating these new industries, we really want to take advantage of that economic growth opportunity, right? We have to be able to sell those goods abroad so that we can actually pay for the services that we want locally.
Thank you.
Do you have questions about these sectors actually before I move on? Yeah.
Are these sectors, does each region set its own catalyst funding sectors?
That's a good question that I'm not necessarily able to answer since I'm not in those regions. So.
Yeah, so there's California funded 13 different regions. They kind of,
right.
I mean, how they broke it up, I don't really understand, quite honestly, but this region, this is the capital region. There's 8 counties in the capital region. We selected our own industry areas. Each of the 13 select their own based on their geographic differences. Yeah. So one of the things you would see in the tradable industry area down in the Los Angeles area is film. Because that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
But although here we don't have that so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think each region has its own unique economic considerations. Even like the 8-county capital corridor has like a very diverse economy that has specific clusters that are more important to specific regions. They're not present here, but our siblings up in the foothills and the Tahoe Basin are a part of our region. They're far more reliant on things like tourism and working land than they're necessarily going to have access to advanced manufacturing, right? And so those end up becoming some of the discussions for them. How do they fit into that patchwork, and how do they actually have access to this funding, right? I'm gonna jump forward a little bit because it's great that we talk about what can we export, how do we serve our community, but the point of the grant is to center the community at every step that we take. And there is going to be extensive discussion here about community-centered inclusionary practices, economic inclusionary approaches, and then ultimately like the transparency piece, like how are we really doing what we're doing and how are we being accountable to our community partners. So this is a Valley Vision slide, and we're going to get into some suggested practices or potential practices. But when you're thinking about your grant, these are sort of the triangulation you want to make about whether or not it's appropriate for you to apply for the grant and way in which you conceive of your application. You want to ask yourself, like, what inclusionary practices that are going to prioritize in this specific language from Valley Vision, the unique geographic and holistic needs, strengths, and perspectives of diverse populations. This is particularly important as you develop in a community that has historically been left out of the development process, and making sure that their voices are represented in both potentially your proposal and that they're also going to be receiving benefits out of the proposal through the process. Economic inclusionary practices also are important because beyond centering the voices of the community members, it also has to be a consideration for what kind of economic mobility are we providing for these communities. It's great that we're talking about selling goods around the world, but that's not making much of a difference for folks if they're not actually seeing that come back to their communities. And so this is really answering the question of how is the community going to benefit from the economic mobility that's created by that new tradable commodity that we're talking about, or that new service-facing opportunity that's available. And lastly, and certainly not least, as far as grants are concerned, the data-informed and transparent alignment and coordination. This part is really about how are you actually bringing about procedures as well as decision-making tools to the community so they're involved in the process, right? Are they talking to you? Are they going to be a part of your outreach and your engagement with your project? If they're not, you have to consider that when you're going through your application process. And believe me, it's actually in the RFP as part of the question on how you're going to do just that. So when you're developing your idea, you need to really think about what kind of outreach do you have? And guess what? Your respective regions all have designated outreach specialists and their community ambassadors that you could probably lean on as resources to help you devise some of those strategies. Now, all right, This is some more this is some technical stuff about the grant that I wanted to cover, that you should be prepared for. If you haven't opened up the grant RFP, as Scarlett had identified, you're gonna get those materials already. They are available on Valley Vision's website, but some things you're gonna need to be thinking about. You're gonna need references, and you're gonna need like 2 funder references. They should be able to speak to your ability to fulfill the type of work that you're talking about, but that your ability to fulfill the needed reporting requirements. So if you haven't necessarily applied for a grant before and this is your first time, this one's probably going to be a bit more challenging. If you're used to like working with grants, or if you need you have that expertise, that might also set you up to be a really effective partner for folks that may need a little assistance there. The applicant and the organization documentation for contracting, this is pretty standard RFP stuff. But you're going to need a list for your board of directors, your governing body. You're going to have eligibility to conduct business in the state of California. You're also going to need to have relevant insurance certificates and any recently audited financial statements for review. Lastly, and these are optional, but I think they're absolutely important, is going to be support letters from any of your partners or people that could be of benefit to your project. When you're thinking about data-informed and transparent practices, you should also be identifying, well, who are you going to be working with, and are they able to demonstrate that they support your project? It's not enough to say that, hey, I talked to so-and-so's organization, they support us, they say it's a great idea. Get it in writing, okay? Get it in writing, and it's absolutely essential for your project.
On so that says most recent audited financials or financial statements covering it. So it doesn't have to be audited.
No, like, I mean, that's where, I mean, it's really like, what can you be transparent about financials with your organization? And like, some folks have a mandatory annual auditing. Like, I know a lot of labor organizations have to go through that process. Not everybody is required to.
Right.
So if it hasn't happened, but like, if you do have it available, like, I would supply what you have.
Okay, yeah, at first I thought we had to kick off an audit because we haven't been audited. So 5123, we haven't gotten audited financials. Some grants required. I thought this did. And then so that if we got it, we'd have to, pay $10,000 or something to get. So just transparent financial statements for the past 12 months will do. Okay. Good news.
Additionally, like, some of the things on the optional stuff, you should identify who are you working with. Like, if you're planning on subcontracting consultants or other groups, you should identify that. If you have plans to upskill your existing staff members, take advantage of that professional development, you should include that. You should include summaries of those parts of the proposal. Make sure that the project is transparent as possible, and that you'll be good stewards of the public's money when it comes to administering this grant.
Don't forget your insurance certificates.
All right.
That's true too.
Gonna get into some other quick stuff. This was discussed a little bit earlier, and this is from the project proposal, the proposers workshop in December. They're suggesting that there's no specific minimum or maximum awards, but like, awards are recommended to be up to $1 million, and a total of $9 million in funding is available across the Sacramento Capital Corridor region. So keep that in mind as you're designing your project. If you are, you have a really big project idea and that's your exploring, that's great. Take a part of that and make that the focus of your grant proposal. Especially if you're gonna need a lot of money to pencil for your project. And this is where, if you've got a $50 million project, don't expect to necessarily get all of the $9 million. It will be shared across the region. There is a second funding opportunity plan for later in the spring or summer of 2025. You want to speak to
I
that?
just want to add, because I know that Valerie got some questions about the second funding opportunity. That is a part of the $9 million.
Oh.
So it's not like a second $9 million. It's a part of the $9 million. Yeah, sorry.
It's all one pot. It's all one pot.
So I have a question about this. So how far should we plan the budget for the grant? Is it like, when we ask for the money, is it to be, to have a pilot up and running and ready for the first year, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Central-
Can I go back? I went too far.
Pilot, so like a year and a half from.
You can go, you can be within what is the correct amount of time for your project within that amount of time, so within the 18-month
And
period.
then when we're ready for the scale, so it's a pilot, and then if the pilot is successful, then we can scale it. So if, for example, the pilot is 6 months, even though it's before September, I can just apply grants for 6 months.
Yeah,
Okay, and then there will be the follow-on.
then you would be looking for funds for the implementation
For the
itself.
implementation.
Yeah, these funds can't be used for
Yeah,
implementation,
I get
so
it, I get it.
if your project only needs 6 months
For
to
the pilot.
get to what it needs to do, show itself, then it's 6 months.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the anticipated date of award?
Oh, it'll be the end of February. I think the exact.
Very quick.
That the timeline's on a slide later, but
Yeah.
it is, I believe, February 28th.
Yes,
It's gonna
very
be
fast
announced.
turnaround.
That's the award notification. The start date, to answer more precisely about how long you should plan. The start date of the grant is March 1st, 2025. And the end date, projects must be completed by September 30th, 2026.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Some other technical information here is you will be required to submit quarterly progress reports and a comprehensive final report. These fiscal invoices will be submitted on a monthly basis. Our fiscal invoices will be submitted on a monthly basis and must include supporting documentation of all expenditures. That's separate of the progress and comprehensive final reports. You have to submit to monthly invoice tracking to make sure that you're spending according to your plan. I think the other way also on the timeline, an important piece is the money is being allocated is intended to be spent in that 18-month window. Is not necessarily meant to be awarded because you're planning to wait several years until frankly, until interest rates come down. So if you're waiting for that, that may not be appropriate way to apply for the funding, but there should be an intent to spend it within that 18-month window. All right. So let's talk quickly about how do we submit. So this is, I think, where we got a few questions. So first and foremost, Valley Vision set up an online portal for you to submit. Okay. You can also, and this is maybe a suggestion that I would have for you to start with, is inside the RFP packet is a list of the questions you need for the proposal. And I suggest that maybe you make a document and you start filling those out so that you can copy and paste into the web portal. Not because you can't use the web portal to be able to free flow and create your proposal, but if you need to workshop with a partner, right, it'd be a lot easier to do it from a shared document. When you create your submittable account, and it's easy, you can even use your Facebook account to create a submittable account. But once you open it, it's going to be for your proposal, and it's going to be a little bit more challenging to share with folks to log in to potentially edit your grant. So my suggestion is, you can use Google Docs and just pull those questions. And then when you're done, you can just come through and copy and paste into the portal and then you can submit. If you choose not to, if you're submitting solely on your own, you can actually hop on there. You can save a draft, come back at any time, continue it as needed up until that deadline of February 2nd. Okay. So it's very straightforward. It's very intuitive. The questions are found in the RFP document, but also it's very easy to use web format. If for whatever reason you do have a technical challenge, right, you can either flag us or Valley Vision also has designated communication open if there was to be a technical issue with the application. There's also, just in case you do need some help, they do have. Yeah.
You can finish your point.
I was going to point out, so they do have a submitter resource center for help videos and articles to reach out to the customer support team. I think that's really important, especially if technology is not necessarily your friend. Sometimes these resources can be of real help to help you troubleshoot some of the basic questions on how do you access that web portal. In the event that those are not helpful, that's when I would either reach out to their customer support team, or if for whatever reason the link were to go down, right, and we have to troubleshoot from there, as technology is not infallible, we'll have to go from there. To your question?
Yeah, I was going to ask if the second round of funding is expected to have a similar timeline with a 3-month application window, because that's super generous, but being that this meeting is 2.5 months
Yeah.
in.
So the second round, are you mean from the 9 million catalyst fund, or are you talking about the implementation phase when that money becomes available?
But I meant the catalyst fund.
So catalyst fund, that deadline is February 2nd. And the second round award, to my knowledge, is accounting for the projects submitted by the February 2nd timeline. It's the award date that will come later. I have that correct?
Yeah, are you referring to how, like, if you were to wait and apply later kind of thing, could you ask?
Yeah, for the next one.
The next round, I think it's be the same kind of process. There were holidays this time, so that accounted for a little bit of a longer, time period for folks to get their proposals together. So it may be a little bit shorter, but it's gonna be in that same range. Yeah, I don't.
April or so.
They've been saying April or May. A little bit of it depends on how many projects come in and the uplift of getting things going, that kind of stuff.
So right now, we're on like a 20 some odd day deadline to finish our app and get it in.
Less than 20.
Yeah. Very short amount of
Technically speaking, so the RFP itself was released the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're hosting the workshop now in part because I'm doing this partnership with the Ring of Democracy, but the community ambassadors are hosting workshops across their respective regions. I think a lot opted for sort of the middle of January so that folks might have a tentative idea as to what they're applying for, and so that they could focus more on the how do we support you in your existing application? If it's your first time hearing about the grant, we're also here to help with that education outreach, which is why we wanted to go through a review section to make sure that folks actually were a little bit more familiar so that they didn't just walk into it as blind.
And again, we don't know how much money will be released for the second go around, but you can apply for both. So if you miss one, you could reapply. So there's nothing stopping.
I just wanted to echo a 3-month grant window is really amazing. And I think it's super important to have some extended timelines like that, especially for organizations that are not accustomed to the fast-paced nature of developing grants, or maybe don't have an extensive development department. Because if you're trying to partner with people, it takes time to develop those partnerships, time to develop the grant, and then time to refine it into a strong application. 3 months would be amazing.
Yeah, and I also think that this grant did a really, if this is your first time in an engagement workshop, that's in the last year and a half, there has been an attempt to engage a lot of stakeholders through a variety of sub-regional meeting formats, and so hopefully this isn't the first time. If it is, engagement is a continued practice, and so we're glad that you're here, and that make sure that we keep you in the loop so that no other timelines lapse without notice. We'll go back here and then up front.
So if you have history with the SBA when they first started grants, and you successfully you were awarded a good amount of money, and you kept track of that, and you did a really good job, can that then be flopped over to saying, hey, look at our past results and look at what we want to do in the future, and this is where we want to go?
I mean, I don't necessarily see why you wouldn't be able to attach that to your application, right? The grant is asking for specific references, so if you have those from that period, I would suggest maybe that would be a place to start, is to be able to show that. You can also upload additional documentation that be able to verify that.
Gotcha.
What are the chances that the RFP will be extended to for-profits?
At this point, I can't see that happening because the grant's been released, and those determinations had already been made.
And it was determined by the state of California, so it's not part
Yeah,
of
it's
the
not
We
BB.
Prosper Together group. We have no say in it. It's state of California said it has to be nonprofits or government organizations, right? Cities, counties, etc.
And the ones that create jobs are many times businesses, which is, they don't understand this, we can't apply to this.
Right, well, I think where the state was coming from is where you started, right? You said they they're asking for businesses to work with nonprofits so that we can really be inclusive in the model itself. So I think that's a part of what they were thinking about when they started.
I would love to talk one day with those people, but it's and it's.
I hear you. I hear you.
It's, does it make a lot of sense? Investing here the time instead of building my business and.
Yeah, we'll talk, Renata, because I can think of a few nonprofits. Even, I mean, you all might want to scoop up Renata right now. And let me know, that's fine. But if not, then there are other nonprofits that we can potentially introduce you to that can apply with you. Because you have a really great idea.
2 weeks.
And also like, you know, it's not just nonprofits, but you know, things like chambers are eligible to potentially apply. So like if you have a chamber of commerce that you work with, that might be a place where you could start, or other organization that engages in that kind of small business incubation that are oftentimes incorporated as a nonprofit. So it's not meant to exclude small businesses owners. It is really, I think, intended to make sure that nonprofits and other organizations are centered in the development of the proposals. A lot of grants don't necessarily require that. So this is, I think, a step in that direction to see how this works with this very specific grant. I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, just real quick on the chambers, our chambers eligible, I thought they're 501c6 and I think you have to be a 501c3 to
You can
apply.
be an NGO, a non-governmental organization, you don't necessarily have to be.
Yeah, labor unions are also similarly
Yeah,
filed.
I know labor was specifically called out, but the others, okay. My question, are you gonna cover the definitions of the disinvested community? Because that's where, so in the RFP, it's very explicit of how the California Jobs First define that. But with other stakeholder engagement that I've heard, for example, with Sierra Business Council, and they kind of provided different summaries of what that was, and it seemed more broad than what I really found in the RFP. So
I have the RFP in front of us, and so I can read it if you don't mind.
Yep, go ahead.
Just how we're defining disinvested communities. California Jobs First defines disinvested communities as any of the following. Census tracts identified as disadvantaged by the California Environmental Protection Agency. Census tracts with a median household incomes at or below 80% of the statewide median income, or with the median household incomes at or below the threshold designated as low income by the Department of Housing and Community Development's list of state income limits adopted pursuant to section 50093 of the California Health and Safety Code.
And where are those numbers?
You'll set, so we're gonna send you this document.
Right.
So you're gonna have this exact quote.
Okay.
You'll be able to read it. But there's two more bullet points. High poverty area and high unemployment area as designated by the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, California Competes Tax Credit Program. And California Native American tribes as described by the Native American Heritage Commission, NAHC Tribal Consultation Policy. That's how you designate it. It's very technical, but as soon as you look at those websites, you look at the map, you'll be able to find your little census tract. You'll be good.
I can't speak for the other ambassador and how they laid that out. Like we would say, go with what's outlined in the RFP as the most direct guidelines that are available. I know that it may seem open to interpretation, and actually the next section we're going to get into is to talk a little bit about how we engage that component and think about how we develop a community-centered or inclusive economic approaches. But I would go with just a clear textbook definition outlined in RFP. Go ahead, Nicole.
I just had a quick question about the schedule, because I know we're probably moving on, but I saw that there was an award notification date. Is that the same date that the award is actually being distributed? Or is that the approximate start date? I guess like I'm just trying to figure out like within all of this, like when
When's the
did
check
the
get
funds
that?
actually be released? Is it like that would be writing an invoice for this? Like I'm just,
Yeah.
like that's because I've seen grants where it's like, oh, well, you're getting back paid for stuff, and then it's like a year, 6 months down the line. I know that's what I'm trying to do, but just curious.
So the way I would infer it is like the monthly invoicing process is supposed to, I think, be intended to be able to facilitate that, to make sure that you get your money up front as best as you can, right? So it's the projects begin and you have to invoice on a month-to-month basis. That is how it should work. If I am That's not my angle. I won't be administering that part of the grant, but I think that's something that maybe we could follow up and get some clarity on and then maybe communicate out through the group, through TROD.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, it is a reimbursable grant. You can invoice monthly, and so it would be, you expend for a month, you invoice. Valley Vision is very, has been very fast at return at moving things, so it's like 30-day max kind of thing for them. So they're really quick about moving things around because they recognize a lot of organizations don't have that large cash flow to run something like that. So it's the best they can do. But it is state mandated reimbursable.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, sorry, so since the start date is March 1st, and in April, you'd be able to give the March invoice. And then 30 days from when you submit your invoice, you get, so 60 days?
30,
60,
60,
kind
90.
of period. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question.
Does it mention anything about advance funding if you're awarded?
I don't believe that it's it's an option. I don't think it's an option. Yeah, I'm not gonna 100% state that because you could always talk to Valley Vision if you're awarded, but I don't believe it's an option.
I think that's a question that maybe we could follow with Valley Vision and then with the list from this meeting, be able to provide additional guidance as they give it.
Because part of the grant also allows for staffing, say. And so I think that that's, something that we kind of have to keep in mind that they're going to be, helpful when it comes to things like.
And on their website, there's a list of frequently asked questions from the previous webinars, and I believe that the question that was asked is actually in there, so, but it's probably already out.
Yes, so we'll be sure to send that to you in the summary.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad we got into the technical definition of divested community because we're gonna get into this next section. I'm gonna give a quick disclaimer. So we're gonna get into a discussion about potential strategies, but this is not meant to be like if you use these strategies, this does not guarantee you any outcome in your application or any special privileges associated with your application. This is merely as a result of engagement and research that has been conducted and discussed at some of the workshops in the last year that we thought we would bring up and make sure that folks think about this as they're generating their proposal. So I don't want any calls come March 1st that says, I use this strategy. They're good strategies, but also, there's stuff here that we haven't thought of, and we encourage folks to be able to think about that, right? So I'm going to talk through a couple of these things here that I think are really important. So we're going to start with linguistic access and bring up linguistic access in part because when you think about workforce development or how you engage with the community or how you engage in workforce development, one of the biggest barriers to access is going to be upfront going to be language and whether or not you're able to communicate effectively with communities in which you're engaging with. The other piece of that, sort of the other side of it, is culturally relevant leadership. So when you engage with a particular community, you need to be mindful of identity, and you also need to be mindful of the way in which you're engaging with that specific community. You should not be claiming to speak for a community in which you are not a member of. And in particular, like if there are any language or cultural identity barriers there, I think it's really important you think about that before you apply for the grant funding, including finding partners that you are working with to develop the outreach models that you would want to engage with. This is particularly important, I think, for Sacramento, which is a destination for refugee communities, and making sure that they're a part of that process. And if you need help with that, we'd love to be that resource to be able to connect you with some of those organizations, but also keep in mind that those groups often get left out of the conversation altogether, right? And so think about that as at the front of your application as to who have we worked with to develop and be able to access and communicate with those groups. Did I see you raise your hand? I'm sorry. Okay. Other things that have often come up in the discussion about what does economic mobility and community inclusivity look like is keeping in mind specific conditions that may impact people's ability to participate. Among these, and this is not meant to be exhaustive, but transportation and childcare can often impact whether or not somebody is going to be able to participate in any particular program or any particular workforce development. And I say this because after talking to a number of groups about like what causes attrition within your program, why have there been all these initiatives that have jumped up and then ultimately failed? And time again, we hear a couple of things. One of which is transportation. People do not have a way to get to a work site and thus are not going to be able to continue any on-the-job training or development that they may receive there. Right? That's one. So think about when you're doing your outreach or your engagement, like how are we centering transportation? Is it close to transit? Is there is it bikeable or walkable? Right? Are there communities like, are we locating close enough to communities that are left out that they're able to get around the transportation barriers? And when you do that, you're also going to probably unpack ways in which the transportation overlays themselves are wrought with inequalities that also have to be addressed. And that's something that you should consider when developing your grant. With that also being said, is oftentimes childcare gets in the way of meaningful participation in the workforce. And without belaboring this point, I think a lot of folks are going to be able to help identify with this. But it's not just can folks afford childcare, which is its own problem in question, right? It's also whether or not the childcare is either available at the time in which you have to go to work, right? Or if it actually, going back to the first two, linguistic access or culturally relevant to the community in which you're coming from. These are things that get really complicated in how we think out our grant, but things that we should be factoring in when we're trying to create an inclusive economy. In particular, like when we think about childcare, like if you're working with any group that's developing any product that they will manufacture, and your factory would have different shifts, whether it's 6 a.m., 2 p.m., or overnight, those are outside the hours of most childcare facilities. It's also true for healthcare workers, right? They're working at a 24-hour hospital and their childcare options may not actually be available. This is also true of folks like in construction, right? Who are often seasonal, but also like sometimes they're on a road crew, it's 2 a.m. because it's going to be 105 that day, right? And so the irregularity of that work can really impact their ability to have access to childcare. So please consider that as you're evaluating your options. While they couldn't be here tonight, I did have a robust conversation with the Child Action Network and talk about creating targeted childcare plans related to a specific employer or group that may be interested, and they're open to that discussion. They generally incubate childcare providers in low-income communities, but they focus on the geographical nexus, but they really also want to take this approach to how do we get closer to the employer nexus, right? That's where maybe a large group of folks have that community of interest where they all need to be able to drop off their kids and hopefully close enough to where they work. Another strategy to think about for the inclusive project is thinking through the community benefit agreements that you're willing to commit to, whether you're a new employer or an institution that's creating in a specific community. What kind of agreements and commitments are you making and with who? Right? Who is representing that community? What kind of agreement are you entering into? Is it legally binding? And is there accountability or recourse in the event that there's a dispute about that community benefits agreement, as they so often do? Another piece of that, and this is, I think, the fun part about partnership development, but you got to think through your revenue sharing. So like, it's not enough to get a support letter from somebody saying, hey, I support your project. You should talk through and figure out, well, how much money are they going to need to execute their project, right? If I want to bring childcare into my project and I have a subcontractor wanting to do that, make sure to ask up front to know what that is so it can be factored into the cost in your grant proposal. You have to think these things through to be able to have the most inclusive project possible. Throwing on a couple of other ideas here about, especially when we're thinking about transparency and accountability and how we create those into the project itself. I think we also need to think about the types of engagement we do, and a couple of ideas were some qualitative interviews with folks on like what their experience is vis-a-vis a specific industry or program, but also like making sure you understand like their whole lives and not just like their specific interests in a particular job or initiative that's coming up. Thinking through that really comes out, I think, very cleanly in a qualitative interview where they can really tell you what their lived experience is like. And lastly, and more of a quantitative approach, but like if you do any engagement related to your project, exit surveys are actually a really good way to engage folks, and there will be one for this, so stay tuned. But also, you want to solicit that feedback, even if it's uncomfortable, because sometimes, especially if you're developing in a community that has been historically divested, that is ultimately going to be a problem when it comes to like your further engagement with them. We have to be willing to lean into those uncomfortable conversations. Otherwise, we're going to miss the mark and we repeat those patterns that we came together to try to break. And so we want to keep that in mind when we're developing our proposals. I know we're a little pinched on time and I want to get folks opportunity for some breakout discussions. So I think what might make sense for us to be able to get back on time here, I want to just sort of maybe popcorn around the room here to ask, like, what strategies do you think here might be applicable to your project? See anything up there that might have resonated with you?
Representative leadership, obviously, childcare. I mean, transportation was a key thing for us with our workforce development program because we prioritize people with barriers to employment. So most of them wouldn't have been able to make it to work. The other thing I include with that is also nutrition. So we hire a lot of young people who aren't accustomed to say like bringing the lunch to work and then working a full day. So like being able to offer supportive wraparound services like that make a huge difference in people's lives.
Love that, actually, because the other question is like what strategies are not mentioned. Nutrition has come up in a number of programs that I've talked about. Oftentimes folks will show up, they haven't even eaten yet, right? And it may have been a while since they ate last, and that absolutely is going to impact their ability to participate effectively and meaningfully. It could be a reason for a number of reasons why they may choose to not continue with the program. Anyone else? Good.
Yeah, you mentioned cultural inclusivity. I think a part of that is also providing English language resources. And maybe that's like implicit to that strategy, but explicitly naming the fact that there are lots of tools and resources available to provide that type of support, especially tailored to workplaces and job sites, working with your private sector partners to understand like what type of English do folks need to learn, and then developing that as part of your project.
It's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Community benefits agreement. Our project is like in the middle of a neighborhood, and it's going to be a pretty big, pretty noisy project for a while. And so making sure that community members, neighbor associations, folks who aren't represented in neighborhood associations are feeling, are feeling that they have a say in what is going to be showing up in their literal backyard. And I think the exit surveys and having that continuous loop of feedback, because just because it was okay at the beginning, doesn't mean it's going to be okay at the middle and at the end. So just kind of really integrating the whole community and all the different partners and stuff is fun.
Great suggestion. What strategies are not mentioned here that we think you would want to use in your project?
I guess someone brought up supportive services, wraparound services. Wasn't mentioned, but I think it's important to do that. And like we look holistically at the folks we get involved in because there are many barriers. So we look to understand with a lot of intentionality what those barriers are. And some that were listed there, of course, housing was another specific one that they might be folks that are just, this is their first job and now they're landing a great opportunity with a career, but they're nearly homeless or staying in their car. And so now there's a situation of how do you remove the barriers, get them on that trajectory that they can support and sustain themselves. So that's a big part of what we do.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, hasn't this been a problem historically?
I think that's where the goal here is, and applying for the funding, we don't want to repeat that pattern, right? There's our opportunity to acknowledge that we've had those repeated patterns, and then what is our game plan moving forward so we do not repeat those mistakes.
Another one I didn't see mentioned up there is like financial literacy education. That's a huge one for us. trying to get people to understand like the scale of compound interest while they're still young. As well as like setting them up to establish like a high yield savings account and start a retirement account, and then also putting money in those accounts because that's how we demonstrate our values with our budgets.
Correct.
A budget, what's that?
Other ideas? Look, these are not meant to be an exhaustive list, and you may over the next couple weeks be sitting down on your application and thinking, you know what? These are all great ideas and something else comes to you, right? And so we really want you to be thinking about ways in which you can center both community inclusivity and that economic mobility to make the most effective proposal possible. So that when we do distribute this grant funding, we do not repeat those patterns that so often have been repeated when it comes to receiving and executing grant development.
I mean, to be authentic, you have to be embedded in that community to gain their support. And even for them to understand exactly what you're planning on doing.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, you can't just come from outside of the community and expect immediate acceptance. You have to build that up over time.
Yeah, I think that's where factoring that into your outreach discussion, like how are you reaching out and with who, right? Because there are also going to be times in which specific actors will claim to represent a community when they may not, right? And I think that's where you should have a portfolio like of your outreach attempts on who you reach out to and make sure that you made an exhaustive search where possible, and where not, you know, you could have an open forum, right? You could canvass a neighborhood and make sure folks know that this is coming, right? There are a lot of ways in which you could do that outreach and just, you know, I hate to, the organizer may thinks, you know, like it's all resolved by just go knock some doors, right? Because if you knock some doors, you're going to get some attention. But, you know, that's sort of a lost art these days where folks are actually hearing directly from folks. And then like, do you meet somebody and could that person potentially host like a forum in that specific neighborhood in which you're trying to reach, especially in lieu of like a neighborhood association or some other specific institution that might not be there. I do want to, we wanted to create some time here so that folks talk about partnership formation. And I think in this case, I still would like to maybe do a quick breakout so that folks who talk amongst themselves about what partners they both have now and which partners are they looking for. Because after this breakout, we're then going to actually pivot towards some networking. So I'd like to sort of number folks off, maybe 1 through 4, and then we'll separate and we'll go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and be able to talk about who are you working with now, and if you're not, like who do you want to be working with, right? Because that is the question you should be asking yourself, especially as you know time is ticking on getting these proposals. You may need a support letter. So let's just start here. We'll go 1,
2, 3. What are we numbering to?
4.
1,
2, 3,
4.
1,
2.
3.
I have to go.
Oh. All right.
4.
Yep.
1,
2.
We're out.
All right. 3. And then I make 7, number 4. And then we'll have the TRD and CLC staff will be coming around to the groups, but we'll go 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And then we'll take about, let's say about 10 minutes to be able to do that part. And then we'll come back and we'll brainstorm some of that.
Yeah.
Great, I love your friend. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I don't need that. How are you? I'm I think 2 is not like, yeah. Michaela, love you. Nice to meet you. Jessica? Very nice to meet you. Yes. Okay. And who are you guys? I'm sorry, a lot of names. One of our
Sacramento Community.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm the California Health Representative. We're also another community. So I might not be too California discussion, but to get to the experience for Sutter County, I can help with that.
So you're looking for something, yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay, sorry, because I know someone who has a nonprofit helping pregnant